everyone, this is John Daly again. I'm here with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
All good so far.
Great. So today we'll be talking about a big story over the past week and a half, the FBI search on former President Trump's home at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. It happened on the Monday before last, and the search had to do with classified government documents, allegedly including some of the top secret variety that had been improperly taken and were being kept at Trump's residence. Now, there's a lot of layers to this story, both legally and politically. And in a little bit, I want to get into how Trump's political and media allies have been reacting to what happened. But to start things off, what were your initial thoughts when you first heard about the search last week?
Well, one initial thought was we don't have all the information we need to come to conclusions, which hasn't stopped the crazies on the right and the crazies on the left from drawing conclusions. It would be nice if that affidavit, which laid the groundwork down for why the Justice Department asked for the search warrant, if that were released, that would tell us a lot. But there are certain things we do know. We do know that despite what we're hearing, the raid was legal. Okay, that's a fact. We do know that Donald Trump should not have had classified documents in his possession. Okay. Now, why he did, by the way, is a mystery to me. But we know that he shouldn't have had them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the raid was proper or necessary or required. But we know that he shouldn't have had those documents. We know that he can't declassify documents and say, well, they're not top secret anymore because I say so. Even if you're the former president, you can't do that. You need a procedure to be followed, and there's no evidence that he followed the procedure. We also know that there's not a shred of evidence to support the crazy right-wing nuts who are saying that the FBI planted evidence. They're also saying that the FBI acted like the Gestapo. So here's the final thing for now that we know for certain, that the hard right and the hard left are both composed of a bunch of screwballs. The hard right is not significantly different from the nuts on the hard left. The hard left goes after judges they don't like. The hard right goes after judges they don't like. The hard left says defund the police. The hard right says defund the FBI. So principles are not involved in this. What it comes down to, overwhelmingly, not entirely, but overwhelmingly, how you feel about the raid is determined by how you feel about Donald Trump. If you support Donald Trump, you think the raid was a terrible, terrible thing. If you don't support Donald Trump, you think the raid was just business as usual. Both sides are hypocritical, and I am tired of it.
Oh, you're not alone, I'm sure. No, it's interesting. I was watching, I wrote about this in my column last week, but as soon as I heard about this, and I think it was actually you who mentioned it, you had texted me about it, and I hadn't had the television on. So yeah, I was checking over to see what some of the reactions were, and even I was really sort of surprised, even by some of the stuff that was happening on Fox News, the hot takes. Mark Levin called the search the worst attack on this republic in modern history. Dan Bongino said that every single person involved in this needs to be fired immediately. Steve Bannon, unsurprisingly, said that he compared the FBI to the Gestapo, like you said. Michael Caputo called them the KGB, and a few days later, both Newt Gingrich and Jesse Waters were indeed sort of suggesting that the FBI had planted evidence at Mar-a-Lago.
This is a generalization, and generalizations only are worth a certain amount. But cable news is an unserious place to get your information. It's just unfreaking serious. The idea, I worked at CBS for 28 years. Was it a liberal place? Yes. Was there a liberal bias? Yes. But the idea that somebody could go on the air and suggest that the FBI planted evidence without a shred of evidence to support that contention, that person would have been fired. not only is nobody fired for making outrageous claims, and they're making outrageous claims on CNN also. Let me make that clear. They're rewarded in that they know that's what the people in the audience want to hear. You know, the people calling the shots in this story on cable television aren't the executives, aren't the anchors, aren't the producers. They're the audience that are calling the shots. The audience wants to hear that the FBI planted evidence, so that's what Jesse Waters will give them. But it's unserious. And as somebody suggested to me just the other day, if they would just take the word news out of their title and call it Fox, or if CNN didn't call it the cable news network, but simply CNN, said it's a small thing, but it's a step in the right direction.
I agree. And I'd written actually a point along those lines a few years ago for a piece for National Review, where I suggested if they wanted to be more upfront, and not just Fox, I'm talking about all the cable news networks, that they, instead of referring to themselves as a news program, a news entertainment program, sort of how wrestling went from what they used to promote as a sport, professional wrestling, went from a sport to sports entertainment. So at least you sort of give people an idea, a better idea of the full story of what they're watching.
I know this is off the topic of the day, but this is so interesting to me. I'm going to repeat it. I've said it before. Tucker Carlson was once sued for defamation of character. His lawyers at Fox, their defense, a defense that the judge agreed with, was you can't convict Fox and Tucker Carlson of defaming somebody's character. Nobody takes what he says seriously. No reasonable, I mean, I'm not making this up. You can Google it, as they say.
Right.
No reasonable person believes what he says. Now, you're running a news organization and your top name says something that defames somebody or allegedly does. And the defense is, well, you can't trust what he says. This is insane. This is freaking insane.
Right. And Rachel Maddow, she's another one who's had that same defense, the same one as Carlson.
Right. And by the way, I want to make clear, this is not, when I say that there's hypocrisy, it's on both sides. I heard a contributor on CNN saying, if I were Donald Trump, I'd advise my family that I'm going away and, I'm going to be wearing an orange jumpsuit and all that stuff. Here's what's so interesting to me, John. The right has a case when they say, what about? I know you're a big opponent of whataboutism. I'm not such a big opponent. I think it makes sense sometimes. You can't have one system for Democrats and another system for Republicans. So when the right says, well, wait a second, Hillary Clinton mishandled classified information, that's a fact. I didn't say that. John Comey, the director of the FBI, said that. Nobody raided her home, but you're raiding Donald Trump's home. That's a point worth considering. But
right.
here's the hypocrisy on both sides. Back then, when the Department of Justice and the FBI decided Hillary Clinton mishandled information, but we're not going to prosecute, the left cheered and said it was just a paperwork matter. Come on. And the right was furious that they didn't, quote unquote, lock her up, right? Now it's the left that wants to lock him up, Donald Trump, and it's the right who says it's just a paperwork matter. They've reversed positions.
Oh, yeah.
They've they've done a 180. When it was Hillary, the right said lock her up. Now it's the left that says lock him up, Donald Trump. When it was Hillary, her defender said it's just a paperwork matter. Now it's Donald Trump supporters who say it's just a paperwork matter. If you're not going to stand on principles, God bless you, that's fine. But this is the no BS zone. So don't expect me, and I think I'm speaking for you, John. Don't expect John to sit by and pretend this BS isn't BS, because that's exactly what it is.
No, you're exactly right. And just to sort of clarify my position on whataboutism, because I do write about it a lot. I'm all for pointing out hypocrisy on either side. What I'm against is when someone does it to defend hypocrisy on their side, which is what, to defend bad behavior on their side. So yeah, that's one. And you're right. There's everybody's, you and I can have no problem looking at both these incidents, Clinton and Trump, and saying, yeah, they're both wrong. They're both, both were, and I do think Hillary got off very, very easily. And it's yet to be seen what's going to happen as far as Trump goes, whether he's going to be charged or not. He may not, either. I don't know.
Let me say this. You're right, we don't know. But if he's charged, this will be the biggest mistake the Biden administration, even if his hands are clean, which is a questionable matter, this will be the biggest mistake they've ever made. You think we're polarized now? If they charge Donald Trump, people will rightly say, oh, there's one system of justice for people you don't like, Republicans, Donald Trump, and another system for people you do like, Democrats, Hillary Clinton. This will be a terrible mistake. When I go down a road, when I'm about to do something, John, that I think will get blowback aimed at me, or I acknowledge is controversial, I do something first. I play the movie all the way through in my head. I say, how is this likely to end? And then I'll either make a decision one way or the other. I don't think Merrick Garland played this movie through in his head all the way through. I just don't think so. Because you could say all you want that nobody is above the law, and technically that's true. But it's one thing if the FBI is going to, you're not even allowed to use the word raid, by the way, in liberal circles. It's not a raid, it's a search, okay? I'm going to say raid, sue me. It's one thing if you're raiding the home of a guy who repairs air conditioners because you think he cheated on his taxes. It's another thing when you raid the home of a former president of the United States of America. That has consequences that are different from when you raid the home of anybody else. And I don't think Merrick Garland, if he thought this through, I see no evidence of that. Now, let me make one thing very clear. If this is a matter of Donald Trump not crossing the T's and dotting the I's, I think they went too far. I think this was ill-advised. But if Merrick Garland has something, and I'm going to get crazy for a second, Donald Trump took this information because he was going to sell it to the Russians, he was going to sell it to the Chinese, or he was going to use it in a book that he was going to write and get an advance of millions of dollars. That's another matter. That's another matter. Then maybe the raid was totally justified. But we need to know that. And his silence may make sense in a theoretical way. Well, we don't talk about matters that are under investigation. This is not a regular matter. This was an unprecedented raid, and we need an unprecedented set of rules. And that would include releasing the affidavit, redacted if you have spies who turned Donald Trump in, or informants rather. But we need more information than we're getting, because all this is doing is continuing the rhetoric on both sides, and the polarization is deepening.
Yeah, you're actually making a point there that George Will, the conservative columnist, he's been making it too. He is by no means a Trump fan, but he is worried about how this will continue to cause this social unrest and further distrust in the DOJ and FBI, who certainly brought a lot of criticism on themselves in recent years. Like you said, Merrick Garland had to know, this would create a political firestorm, and that, this would be interpreted, this act, as inherently political. I did see some pretty interesting analysis the other day. Someone who's pretty familiar with Merrick Garland, and also Wray, the FBI director. They're sort of known for being very non-political in their careers, and in what they are doing in their positions, that actually makes sense. But at the same time, that actually may put blinders on their eyes to keep them from seeing the big picture that you're talking about.
I think that's a good point. I think that's an excellent point. Merrick Garland, after he made his speech, his 4-minute speech, which he didn't tell us very much, he acknowledged that he authorized it, which we could have figured out without him telling us that. But at the end of the speech, he got a little sanctimonious on us. He said that he would not tolerate, and he was very much against this. He didn't use the term bad mouthing, but that's what he was talking about, bad mouthing of the FBI. Well, hold on, Merrick Garland, hold on. The FBI doesn't have a pristine reputation when it comes to how they deal with Donald Trump. Some of its agents were blatantly anti-Trump while they were investigating Donald Trump. One of its lawyers lied to the FISA court to get a warrant against somebody who they needed to in their investigation of Donald Trump. So please, Mr. Attorney General, don't come out and tell all of us with a straight face that you're outraged, that people would be questioning the integrity of the FBI. Yeah, they didn't plant evidence. There's no evidence for that. But the FBI does not have clean hands when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump. Not the entire FBI, but some FBI agents. And we have those of us on the right, and even the crazy right has the right to make the case that why should we trust the FBI? They've shown that they don't deserve our unadulterated trust. They have a point about that too.
Yeah, I think the suspicions, like you said, I think are definitely warranted. When I heard Garland make those comments, I guess my mind sort of went to a little different area. I assumed he was referring. I think he was, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think he was a little more worried about some of the dangerous backlash that some of the FBI were feeling. There's a story that happened shortly after Monday's raid, where this guy in Cincinnati tried to break his way into an FBI office. He was armed. He was there to kill people. It didn't work as he had envisioned. He sort of got chased away. There was a car chase with police. He ended up pulling his gun on them, and they shot and killed him. And it turns out this guy was very much, he was at the January 6th, in DC that day. He was very active on Trump's Truth Social social media application, really, making sort of a scary case about, if they don't get violent, this country is going to go down the hole. And, it seemed like he was actually reacting to exactly, what had happened on Monday. So that's something.
Well, to that extent, I agree with him. And this is why I say, tell me how the crazy right, the hard crazy right, is any different from the hard crazy left. You had a screwball on the hard left that wanted to kill a Supreme Court justice, and you have people on the hard right that if they had their way, they'd go after this particular judge. Even people on Fox were showing the judge's picture and all that. Do they have no self-awareness? Seriously, do they have no self-awareness? They spend their lives at Fox. They wake up in the morning and the producers say, how are we going to screw Joe Biden and his supporters today? Just as they say on CNN and MSNBC, how are we going to screw Donald Trump and his supporters today? So they want to go after, at Fox, they want to go after the crazies on the left. And then they target the judge. They hold up his picture. They say things that might lead to violence. They say that documents were planted or might have been planted by the FBI. Not an ounce of self-awareness. I've said this before, but since I created this line, and I'm so proud of it, I'm going to do it again. I've met people who work the overnight at 7-Eleven selling Slurpees and cigarettes to insomniacs who have more introspection than a lot of journalists that I know. And by the way, I use the word journalist loosely in this case because Jesse Waters is not a journalist. In addition to being a moron, he's an entertainer. He's an entertainer. And he should not, I'm speaking to our audience now. Please, if you want to watch Fox, your call. You want to watch CNN, do whatever the hell you want. But don't take these people seriously. They are using you. They don't have any respect for you. They know what you want, the most extreme members of the audience. They know what you want, and they feed it to you because they have no respect for your intelligence. Don't respect that.
Yeah, you brought up that point about the photo of the judge. I wasn't gonna planning on bringing this up, but did you happen to see the sort of was sort of a controversial moment the other night where Brian Kilmeade brought up a photo of the judge that was superimposed over a picture of Jeffrey Epstein?
I heard about this, and I said to the person who told me, somebody you know also, by the way, I said, are you kidding? Because I don't watch Fox unless, whatever. I said, are you kidding? So what I don't know, and maybe you can tell me, was Kilmeade alleging that this was a real picture, or was he having some fun with it?
He presented it, it's sort of a nuance because he presented it as if it were a real picture, but when it came up on the screen, he also looked sort of surprised to see it. So I don't know if he was expecting just the half that they had shown before.
Let me just go back to my 28 years at CBS News. Again, it was a liberal place. They didn't know conservatives there. One correspondent said to me, I think I'm the only Republican that I know in this building that voted for George W. Bush, so I'm not pretending that they're a paragon of virtue or anything like that. But if you put that picture on the screen, I don't care if you're a producer or a reporter, I don't care who the hell you are, you're gone. You are gone, because that is outrageous. Now, let's get back to your idea. World Wrestling Federation. Now it's the World Wrestling Entertainment something or other. You want to say it's a show? It's an act? It's a bunch of phony BS? Okay. I'll watch Fox and CNN and MSNBC in a totally different light. But if you're going to have the word news in your title, Fox News Channel, cable news network, then damn it, act like it.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. What was sort of funny, just to add one little thing onto that Kilmeade segment. He was actually handing things over to Hannity at that point, at the end of whatever show comes before then. And Hannity kind of, he sort of tried to help Kilmeade out of it a little bit. He goes, something's off there, And Kilmeade, I don't think he quite knew it himself. My sense is that it was probably some sort of producer, someone behind the scenes that either purposely or accidentally got the joke photo with the real one. I don't know, but yeah, it was.
You gotta go. You gotta go if that happens. You got to go.
I agree.
By the way, let me make one final point before we go, and you could, if you got more, that's fine. Even if it turns out that this was a totally over-the-top raid, okay? If we find out that it was a matter of paperwork, that Donald Trump didn't pack the boxes, that he was sloppy, and God knows he didn't read Central Intelligence briefing papers when he was in the Oval Office. You don't think he's in his basement reading this stuff now. So even if we find out it was a totally unjustified raid, or at least not unjustified, but over the top, unnecessary raid, I'm at a loss for understanding how Trump supporters say, therefore, we need to support Trump in 2024. No, you can do that if you want his supporters, not you, John. But don't tell me that because the FBI, if it turns out to be the case, overreached, that the Justice Department overreached, that they didn't need to do this, that they could have said, okay, now we have the documents, it's over with, and they don't charge him and all that. Don't tell me that because he was the target, I need to support him for president. He still lied about a stolen election, and if you don't want to believe he lied, then he's clinically delusional. It's only one of those two things, because Biden won, okay? He's the one who tried to subvert the peaceful and orderly transfer of power. The first time since George Washington and his successor, Washington Adams. Adams didn't do it. Jefferson didn't. No freaking buddy did it, okay? So don't tell me that even if the DOJ targeted him, I therefore, to make things right, I need to support him, because my friends, that's not going to happen.
Now, I've had trouble following that logic too. I know someone who's really been pushing that is actually Mike Huckabee. He has been making the comment that because of this raid, we should even the GOP should even sort of skip the primary and just make Donald Trump the nominee so he can get in there and clean house, I guess. But I mean, Trump was president for 4 years. If there was this, huge FBI corruption, and he didn't clean it then, I don't know what. I guess I just don't get the argument for it. It doesn't make any sense to me. But it does seem, at least at this point, to be helping Trump politically. A lot of people that have sort of slowly kind of slid off the Trump train or suddenly jumped back on and are kind of in this sort of crazy space again, I
think that's right. And I think that even if you don't like Donald Trump, if this turns out to be something that shouldn't have happened, that reasonable people say, you didn't need to do this, Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, you didn't need to do this. If that becomes the conclusion, this is it's not only going to be Donald Trump supporters who are outraged, it's going to be reasonable, moderate Americans as well. And before this is over, this may help Donald Trump and the Republicans in the midterms and Donald Trump beyond that. And it may hurt the Democrats. The American people, you don't have to like Donald Trump to not like a raid on a former president's home if it was unnecessary. And for me, the dividing line is, why did he have the documents there? If the FBI knows something, if they wiretapped him, if they found out he was making a deal with Putin, I know that's not the case, to sell the documents for $1 billion so Donald Trump could be even richer than he is. Okay, throw the book at him. But if it isn't that, it won't only be Trump supporters who are outraged, it'll be a lot of other Americans as well. Not hardcore Democrats, but a lot of independent swing voters will say, this was wrong, if it turns out to be the case.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, that's the tough part. It's, everybody sort of wants answers now, and they're not coming quickly, and I get why they're not coming quickly. But at some point we will know more about this, and I think everybody will, rational people, who haven't already made up their minds, will be able to sort of look at that and kind of decide if it does make sense that it was worth it or not. So yeah, no, that's a very good point.
But if they don't release the affidavit, you know what's going to happen? We're going to get leaks on the most damaging stuff aimed at Donald Trump. The Washington Post and the New York Times is going to get phone calls that says, what was in that affidavit, and it's going to be something negative about Donald Trump. So release the affidavit, redact stuff that the public can't know, your confidential informant, if there was one or more. But tell us why you asked for the search warrant. That'll go, if not all the way, in calming things down. It'll go some way in calming things down, and we really need that, because without that, it's all speculation without that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm thinking we'll probably get more and more information, and maybe even by the time we're recording this the day before, we probably won't get anything today, Tuesday. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So I guess that's probably a good place to go ahead and leave it, unless you had anything else you wanted to add, Bernie.
I'm all done.
Great. Well, thanks to our members again for tuning in. Let us know if you have any questions in the comment section, questions or suggestions. We always do read those, so we like to hear from you. I guess I'll just go ahead and say have a good day, Bernie. It was great talking to you.
Great talking to you too, John. Bye-bye.